Big pleasure to join you all this morning. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to respond to the last panel's final call for vision. I think these times more than ever are to stand by the vision, to stand by it while others doubt it, others deride it, and create appalling other narratives of a future that we don't want. We must stand by the vision of what we believe in. And that's what I'm delighted to share with you now. So thinking about the foundational concepts of a well-being economy, let's just remember that we are in the midst of escaping from a 20th century mindset that many of us have been taught. Anyone who ever studied economics was taught this. Even if you didn't study economics, it goes in deep. We always start with the market. It's been placed at the center of our vision, supply and demand, putting price as the metric of concern. And that's why we're so fixated on financial metrics. The portrait of humanity that we're taught we are like, rational economic man with money in his hand, ego in his heart, calculator in his head, nature at his feet. He hates work, he loves luxury, he knows the price of everything, and he can never get enough. We have been told that this is a model of us, and we start to mimic this model. There is no way we can thrive as 10 billion people on this planet if we carry on believing that this is like us. And then the goal that's been put into our minds and is being brought even more again and again by today's politicians is, of course, this goal of endless growth. No matter how rich a nation already is, you and I are now sitting in some of the richest countries in the history of humanity. And yet even these countries believe that the solution to their problems lies in yet more growth. This is what we need to escape from. And to escape, we need vision, we need commitment, we need asserting a positive vision of something else that we're for. And there are many approaches to what we call new economic thinking, including the well-being economy that we've here focused on today. Doughnut economics is part of that, regenerative economics, circular economy. And many of us call this new economic thinking. It's only new really because we're escaping from the 20th century mindset. And I think it's really important to realize that it's underpinned by actually millennia of what the Maori scholar Shane Edwards called canoe economic thinking. It has long been known in other cultures. And I think this is a beautiful opportunity to realize that we are starting to bridge across to wisdom that has been held, patterns that have been seen and honored in indigenous traditions across the world for millennia. So this is a big movement of new and canoe economic thinking. I'm going to focus here on Doughnut economics as one approach to the well-being economy. It's just one entry point that people are choosing to use. The Doughnut offers us a new goal. Leave no one in the hole falling short on the essentials of life. We need to provide and produce for everybody's needs, as Michael just said. Leave no one in that hole in the middle. And these are crowdsourced from the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So every government in the world has already agreed that every person in the world has a right not to live in that hole. But as we collectively seek to meet our needs and our wants, we risk going over this ecological ceiling made up of the 9 planetary boundaries. So we must leave no one in the hole, but don't exceed Earth's limits. The goal of the Doughnut is to meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet. Again, this gives us a vision of a positive aspiration that we are for. It's about a prosperity, right? That which we hope for, but also this is the heart of resilience. And if health is what we are valuing and what people are saying they are valuing, this is planetary health. This is about human health in a resilient planetary health. These systems, as the previous panel said, are profoundly interdependent. So let us take the concept of health from our own bodies. It's a profoundly valuable concept that we deeply get. Health in the human body, take it to the health of the planetary body. This is key to a well-being future. But we know that we're very far from this right now. All of the red here shows billions of people falling short on life's essentials, and we're overshooting multiple planetary boundaries. So there is no reason we should expect last century's economic theories to turn this story around. They weren't designed with this in mind. Whether it was Keynesian or neoliberalism, indeed, we need, as Stuart says, we need to move to a new paradigm that starts recognizing the integrity of the living planet. We shouldn't expect last century's government policies to turn this around. They weren't designed for these times. Last century's business models weren't designed for this reality. We need to redesign again for our own times. Let me take you down from the global to national levels. My colleagues have created fantastic national level doughnuts for 150 countries. Here you can see across a range from Malawi to the United States, not one of these countries is living in the donut. It's not, none of them are meeting the needs of all their people within the means of the living planet. And if I indeed put these in a scatter plot of over 50 of those countries, the place where every nation should be aiming for is that top left-hand corner. That's where you rise up to meet the needs of all people, but do so coming back within the means of the living world, like this. So there's not a single country that there. Next time you hear yourself or anybody you know talking about developed countries, you can ask them, where do you mean? Because there's not a single country here that should be calling itself a developed country. There's nothing developed about overshooting planetary boundaries. Costa Rica is closer than any other to getting into its own national donut. So this reorients the way we understand ourselves as nations in the world. Here are the 4 countries I showed you a moment ago. And let's recognize that all these countries are intertwined through long histories of colonialism. I have to acknowledge that sitting here in the United Kingdom. But any country, largely in Europe, we have histories of colonialism and power impacting on others, of military and corporate power extremely prevalent today, trade and finance rules that strap low-income countries into extractive relations, resource extraction, current and future impacts of climate change. Our histories and our futures are profoundly intertwined as nations. The pursuit of growth, which has dominated us through this century and carries on, takes countries in this direction, first heading towards the donut, but then just past it. It does not get us to where we need to be. And this data shows us the actual trends from 1992 to 2050 of different nations, to 2015, I'm sorry. So it shows us that countries are not tracking into the donut. Even those ones that are close to it, they're not tracking into it. Let me turn to the wise words of the systems thinker Donella Meadows. She said, when anyone calls for growth, ask growth of what? And why? And for whom? And who pays the cost? And how long can it last? And what's the cost to the planet? And how much is enough? And this is why we need to overturn and go beyond this growth-addicted, growth-centric mindset that we've been inherited, because it does not take us where we need to go. We need to reorient countries. If we're going to aim for a well-being economy, each of these nations needs to be actually orienting towards that donut. Can low-income nations rise up and meet the needs of all their people without overshooting planetary boundaries as all those before them have done? It's an unprecedented journey on the whole. Middle-income nations, major emerging middle-income countries, can they meet their people's needs while already coming back within planetary boundaries? Again, this is not a tried and tested route. And let's talk to the high-income nations, where you are today, where I am, where many of us are from. These high-income nations that massively need to reduce their overshoot of planetary boundaries while finally meeting the needs of all of their people. And to do this is going to call for a major rebalancing between nations. Rebalancing in terms of reparations, return of stolen land, redistribution of wealth and power, renegotiation of trade and finance rules, so that we actually start to see a balance in the world and that well-being becomes possible for people in all countries. But what kind of mindset, what kind of foundational concepts would give us even half a chance of getting there? What would you want your children and grandchildren to be studying at school and in university if they were the economists of the future? What would best equip them? And this is what I've drawn together as part of Doughnut economics and part of the wider well-being economy movement, concepts that actually help us orient there. So for me, we start not with supply and demand. We start with this embedded economy, recognizing that the economy is a subsystem of society. It is a social construct. We've designed it. It can be redesigned, as it already has been. And that human society is embedded in the rest of the living world. We are part of nature, part of life, and dependent upon Earth's life-supporting systems, the integrity of those planetary boundaries, recharging fresh water, abundant biodiversity, a stable climate, a protective ozone layer overhead, fertile soils. These give health to the planet and to humanity. So embedding the economy and its provisionings, whether it's the market and the state, but also the household of unpaid caring work, and the commons of collaboration. These are 4 fundamental ways we provision for our needs and wants. I wouldn't want to live in a society that lacked any one of them, but they each have their place. And we need to resurrect and strengthen the role of the household and protect it, and indeed of the commons and the state, because we've lived, many of us, in societies excessively dominated by the market as a function. We also need to recognize we need to transform the fundamental dynamics of our economies. We've inherited linear, degenerative systems from industries that take, make, use, and lose Earth's resources. This pushes us over planetary boundaries. We need to instead create regenerative systems that use resources again and again, far more carefully, collectively, creatively, and slowly. And even just in one realm, within the realm of urban design, regenerative policies are coming through and showing us there are different ways that we can build and protect and create landscapes that we and our habitats in very different countries, but the principles occur again and again. At the same time as going from degenerative to regenerative, we also have to recognize we've inherited very divisive economies that tend to and are designed often to capture value and opportunity in the hands of a few. This is why we see the rise of the billionaires. We see the rise of the 1%. There's absolutely no way that humanity can live in the donut in such an extraordinarily unequal world where the richest 1% of people own half the world's wealth. There's no way. We have to move from this divisive economic design to one that is far more distributive, so that value and opportunity are shared with all who co-create it. And that will turn out to be the whole of society. Again, in the space of urban design, there are many existing policies, from social housing in Vienna, community-led redevelopment in Bangkok, community wealth building, and job creation for communities that have been traditionally marginalized at the forefront of the new skills economy. These are just some examples of policies that far more distribute new opportunities. And there are, of course, many, many others. So we need to go from degenerative to regenerative, from divisive to distributive. This takes us on a very quick tour from the 20th century economics that we inherited and makes clear to us that there are 21st century alternatives absolutely ready to be put into practice, these concepts. But of course, what matters is that these concepts come off the page, come out of the lecture hall, come out of the classroom, and actually get put into practice. And that's why the Wellbeing Economy Alliance exists, working with people who are putting it into practice. That's why we as Doughnut Economics Action Lab exist, working with pioneers who say we are starting to do this where we are within the scope that we have. So focusing here on cities and regions, local governments around the world have reached out to us. Every one of these has said we voluntarily choose ourselves to adopt this framework because it chimes with, it enables the transformation that we already know we want to bring about here. So they are working with the tools of Doughnut Economics, and 50 of these 100 have embedded it publicly in their vision, in their policies, their processes, their strategies. Let me show you just a few. Barcelona, a city we know has high ambition to take out the traffic and bring back trees, nature, people, community. They've worked with this framework of the Doughnut to see their own overshoot and shortfall, to set it as a long-term vision for transformation towards a culture of sustainability. Thimphu in Bhutan, the government of Bhutan said, what we see coming out of Western economics, this concept of the Doughnut resonates strongly with our framework of gross national happiness. We want to use them both together in thinking about the future of Bhutan, and specifically of Thimphu, the capital city. And you can see these beautiful cartoons shown here of in the year 2047, imagining the future of the city. It's a regenerative, distributive city. So how can it be redesigned to enable that to happen using both the Doughnut and the concept of gross national happiness? Regen Melbourne, a city that was hit, like many, by COVID, but also by wildfires again and again. And the people of this city said, there has to be another way. We keep going through crisis. And those crises made them turn to the concept of Doughnut Economics to launch a wonderful organization, a wide alliance of organizations, Regen Melbourne, using the Doughnut to envision the future, but also come up with dreaming possibilities like a swimmable Yarra River running through the city centre, livable streets and fooding streets. So bringing imagination with this vision, with these metrics, to start creating the future we want, because otherwise we get drawn back into that future that we've inherited, and we don't want that. It does not make us thrive. We've actually documented many, many of these journeys in a recent report, if it's of interest. Cities and regions, let's get started. We've found that cities and regions and local governments are starting in many, many different ways on this journey. Each one takes a different route. And it's important to reflect and show that it's possible to come into this, because there's no one way. We can't do this as a cookie cutter, imposing on places, this is how you get started. It's up to the people of that place to adapt the framework, but also to adapt how they begin. And we love to share back what we're learning from them. So it's really work that's deeply rich with peer-to-peer inspiration. What can we learn from those who get started, from those early pioneers? Because their proof of practice becomes key. Let's remember that Milton Friedman said, only a crisis, actual or perceived, brings about real change. And when that crisis occurs, people turn to the ideas that are lying around. Well, we want these ideas of Doughnut economics not just lying around, but up and running in practice, in cities and towns and districts and neighborhoods around the world, because we know that more crises are coming. We know they are coming, that we are in them. And so what will people turn to? Will people get desperate? Say it's hopeless, it's too late, we give up, the counter narrative is too strong? Or do we double down on a clarity of a vision that we stand for and show the practice that's already emerging? Because that is what gives places confidence to follow their peers, to follow the pioneers and follow the leaders. So let me finish by pulling back out. I've shared here from the lens of Doughnut economics, but it's just one of many portals into well-being and new economic thinking. You could come in through the well-being framework itself, through circular economy, through regenerative economics, through the economy for the common good, through the SDGs. There are many entry points. I think it's valuable that there are many entry points because people come from different places, are inspired by different things. As long as we connect when we get there and point people to the tools and resources that might be most useful to them. But also recognizing again that this new economics is deeply embedded in long-standing deep visions that we can learn from and take humility in learning from other cultures that have deep understandings of regenerative and distributive practice. There will be a new exchange of policies and inspiration, I think, between places that used to see themselves ranked as developed and developing, and that's really being flipped on its head. So this is an exciting time to learn from pioneers and to learn from deep ancestors. And I'm really delighted to have this chance to share with you today. So here's to standing true to the vision of a well-being economy, standing true to knowing that in times of crisis, people turn to alternatives. So how do we make this alternative irresistibly available, irresistibly proven in practice, so that more and more can pick it up just when they need it? Thank you very much.